So hello, everyone. I'm Robert Weissman, co-president of Public Citizen, here with Lisa Gilbert, our other co-president. Thrilled to have you joining us tonight for this Public Citizen Town Hall. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get going. The way the call is going to work, Lisa and I will each give you some remarks, share some remarks about what's happening in the country right now and how Public Citizen's responding. That'll take 20 minutes or so. And then we're going to have a lot of time for Q&A. What we as a community do, this is a dire time for our country. And as you hear, we're doing so much together and making a difference in a really hard time. But we do that, we make that difference all together. So we can't thank you enough for your engagement and all the ways you engage with Public Citizen. With that, Lisa, let me turn it over to you.
Great. Well, thanks, Rob. I'm just going to end this poll so that logistic is completed and just say welcome. Add my thanks to Rob's. I'm so thrilled to be with all of you tonight. And not just tonight, to be in the fight with you all every single day. I'm so proud of our staff, but also our members, each and every person who's joining us tonight, who is working together to push back right now. We're in a moment where, I think things can feel kind of bleak, where political violence is escalating, where authoritarian moves are increasing, and where it would be kind of easy to throw in the towel. But that is not what we are doing at Public Citizen, and it's not what you, our members, have been doing. Instead, we're running wildly counter. We've been suing the administration, we're organizing, we're fighting back in every way that we can. We're pushing the media, we're advocating to strengthen the spines of members of Congress. We are pushing state policy, and we're working within coalitions of organizations so that we can be more effective and unified. So Rob and I are really excited to be together with you today to update on some of our work. We're going to talk about the various lawsuits we've filed against the Trump regime. We'll share a bit about our role leading the Not Above the Law coalition, a little bit about the organizing work we're doing to oppose Trump's lawless moves, and the work that we are doing to seize control of an inflection point in Congress around the next budget happening literally right now and encourage Democrats to fight. And we want to underscore all of this, these specific updates, with our take on how and why it is more important than ever to find hope, to build community all together, and to mobilize. So with that, I'm going to start by kicking off some discussion on the congressional budget battle that I mentioned, and then I'll move to some updates on our authoritarian pushback. So on the budget, we are working at the center of a coalition to try and ensure that Democrats seize the funding negotiations over the next government budget to fight President Trump's cruel and dangerous agenda. As everyone joining this call knows far too well, since day one of the Trump administration, they have been executing an agenda that increases costs on everyday Americans in every way imaginable, from healthcare to groceries to our electricity bills. So we are organizing allies, driving calls, holding briefings, and working to make crystal clear that if Democrats fight for the interests of the American people and Republicans refuse to negotiate over a budget, the public will blame Republicans for the resulting government shutdown that might ensue. We're positioning ourselves to support Democrats if they fight, but to also hold them accountable if they don't. We're encouraging them to make their votes for a budget deal contingent on addressing Americans' top economic priority, which is the cost of and the access to our health care. As you all know, Trump's priority, big, ugly bill, partisan bill, stripped millions of people of Medicaid. And so fighting back to improve health care and stop these kinds of cuts going forward is critical. And the budget is one of the few moments where Democrats can pick this kind of fight. The bill is a 60-vote threshold, and Republicans need at least 7 Democrats to move it forward. So far, Republican leadership has refused to meet and negotiate the terms of funding the government. They've offered a solely partisan deal. And again, if they refuse to negotiate, then it is they who will be forcing a shutdown. As a final point, any budget deal must both improve healthcare, as I've been saying, but also ensure that the terms of the deal can't be reneged upon as soon as the ink is dry. As you all know, and as Public Citizen has been fighting in court, the administration has been illegally clawing back funding that's already already been approved by Congress. So we're already in an active destruction of the federal government's services and agencies. It's already happening. It's a de facto shutdown via illegal cuts. And so the reason to use this moment, this budget inflection to fight, is even clearer. So this is all coming to a head right now. The budget expires at the end of the month. And so at Public Citizen, we are using this moment to organize our allies, driving engagement with the Hill, and pushing them to use this leverage moment. So stay tuned, but we are deep in the fight and we're hopeful. Um, so now I want to shift gears a little bit and spend some time talking about the work that we have been doing to fight authoritarianism. As you know, it's a fraught and incredibly intense moment right now. There are attacks on institutions, detainment of people for political positions, judges being threatened. A sitting member of Congress was arrested for doing her job. We've seen attacks on unions. Cities are being militarized without cause, which of course we feel very acutely here in DC right now. We've seen defiance of our courts, and really more and more. The list, unfortunately, is very long. So we will talk more about the blows that we're landing with our lawsuits. Rob will share more about that, both the importance of them substantively and the hope that they inspire. So I wanted to talk instead a bit about how we are using coalitions and organizing to fight authoritarianism. As you may know, we co-chair the main coalition in DC focused on defense of the rule of law. We co-chair it with the Constitutional Accountability Center, with Stand Up America, and Move On. It's called Not Above the Law. It's made up of over 150 grassroots, good government, national security groups, as well as legal scholars, pundits, and academics. And we have all joined forces to stand up together against abuses of power and to protect the rule of law. And of course, as you've just heard in the litany of lawlessness I described of Trump's second term, our work is essential. We're playing a critical role organizing at key inflection points. So by way of example, we just a week and a half ago backed up the organization Free DC to create a mass mobilization moment to demonstrate pushback against the National Guard deployment and the federalization of our local police in DC in response to Trump's fake crime emergency. Our organizers co-created the infrastructure for the mobilization and helped to work with other groups to recruit for the massive event. Beyond that example, we are continuously working to activate an ever-growing number of people who just see clearly what the administration is doing and are turning out in greater and greater numbers. I'm sure some of you have heard of the 3.5 number. So I'm going to take a second and be academic with you. But the idea is from political science research led by Erica Chenoweth that in other nations, having had that number of people activated has kept nations from losing their democracies when threatened with authoritarian regimes. So with that in mind, we are working to organize and build ever bigger concentric circles of engaged Americans, both our base and then more and more people in different constituencies, retired judges, faith leaders, business leaders, and more. To achieve that, our team is on the steering committee or leading many of the massive pre-planned events, like the hands-off events that I'm sure many of you joined in April, No Kings event that happened in June, the John Lewis Day of Action that happened in July, and on and on. In addition, we're working with Indivisible, Move On, ACLU, and others to create standing trainings and to build a cohort of people who can do at-scale rapid response. We want to be able to do both, to continue coordinating huge pre-planned mass mobilizations, along with creating the infrastructure for emergency inflections when we need to activate. And through it all, to keep building up the number of engaged Americans towards that goal percent number that I mentioned. So all of that, again, is to just keep building up power and be in the fight together to push back against authoritarianism. So with that, I'm going to pause, hand it over to Rob. But before I do, I want to reiterate what I said at the top. I'm so thrilled to be in the fight with all of you. I'm so inspired by your work and your presence with us tonight and how we are turning out together to build this power. And I'm just actively looking forward to the fight ahead with you all. We just couldn't do it without you. So Rob, I'll hand it over to you to take it up.
Cool. Thank you, Lisa. And again, thank you all for being with us and for everything you're doing with Public Citizen and in other capacities. So just to step back and frame what I'm going to say and what we're trying to communicate together. So telling you what you know, we're living in an unprecedented moment of authoritarian threat to our democracy. And as Lisa listed just a handful of the many, many ways we're experiencing that, we're reiterating, you're highly engaged people, what you know, but we just want to sort of ground in our appreciation for the seriousness of the moment, and also tell you and try to communicate that although we know we're going to lose a lot of things and that real harm is being done by this administration every day and is going to continue every day for the full term of the administration, we think together we're doing really meaningful things to restrain them, to protect our democracy, to limit the harm, and to set the stage for really grand transformation when we get through the Trump administration. So the different pieces we're talking about are part of an integrated approach to dealing with an authoritarian threat of the kind that we've certainly never faced in modern American history and probably ever in American history. So the mobilization that Lisa mentioned is a huge component of it because we want as many people engaged as possible. This coming fight over the appropriations and whether the government stays open or closed, whether we make sure that the president actually spends the money that Congress appropriates, whether we're able to protect our healthcare system or let it diminish, that's a huge part of it. And it's how it turns out is going to depend on how people are engaged and mobilized. And so too is our litigation, both to take on what the administration is doing through its authoritarian measures, instill hope, bring more people into the fold, and again, resist what they're doing. I want to also say, which we're not going to talk about, although we can in the Q&A if you like, we're doing tons of planning for what comes after. But of course, there's so much happening in the here and now, more than we can possibly get through right now to tell you about what we're doing just with that. So I know you all have been very closely following what we're doing in our litigation, and people have been very excited about that. And we're thrilled that we've been able to instill so much hope and make so much difference to the litigation. What we've been saying all along is that the litigation is absolutely crucial to fight authoritarianism, but insufficient. It's why we know we need to do all these other things. We also know, we think every case we bring, we should win. Not just because we're like always on the side of right, which kind of we are, because these are, we think, really clear cases in applying the law and the Constitution in light of the administration's authoritarianism. But we know with the courts we have, we're going to lose a lot of the cases that we should win. We're going to win some, but we're going to lose some. Sometimes when we lose, we're actually going to be able to win and make a difference, even though the case didn't come out our way. Sometimes we're just going to lose. That's how it's going to be. So with that in mind, here's some of what's going on. We are winning some important cases. A lot of these cases drag on, but we're winning some of these important cases. We filed a case over the administration's illegal shutdown of a national hunger hotline. And we've been able to turn that around, made them keep the hotline open. I saw in the chat, which I can't keep up with, but I did capture that the CEO of our plaintiff in that case, Hunger Free America, is on the call. We're so pleased to have been able to represent them and do the important work of this simple thing, keeping a hunger hotline open, congressionally mandated, but keeping it open. We were able to affirmatively just win that case. The administration has illegally tried to take down information on health because they said it contained gender ideology. We won the case, and the information that they were censoring, the people supposedly so free speech, these censors, we got courts to order that the information be back up online, and it's now available for both the public and for clinicians. The administration tried to close down the Job Corps program, which provides education and employment for vulnerable youth. We've got a preliminary injunction in place to keep that program open, even though the administration was trying to close it down. Sometimes when cases haven't gone our way or probably aren't going to go our way, we've still been able to make a difference, as I said. One of our early cases involved when Elon Musk was in charge of Doge. Doge is going to the Treasury Department and trying to get a hold of the government database, a payments database. It was clear what they were trying to do was grab control of that system and just deny payments to people, organizations, companies, educational institutions they didn't like. So that case is still ongoing, but we stopped them from doing what was their real purpose. They've agreed to all kinds of constraints on their behavior. And irrespective of how the case turns out, I think we can say we made a meaningful difference and what's going on. Lots of our cases are still pending, super important cases, but this is often how things play out. The courts don't work that quickly, even though we're constantly asking for emergency action. We have cases that are pending to keep open against the illegal shutdown orders from the administration, the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, to keep open against their illegal shutdown orders, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Both those cases are pending. How they're going to turn out, too soon to say. We have some cases that we're going to lose, of course. We've got some that are really hanging in the balance. If you're on our email list, as most of you are, you know we've been communicating with you a case that is right now pending at the Supreme Court. We could literally get a decision from the Supreme Court during the course of this call. This vital case over whether the administration has to make payments of foreign assistance grants, billions of dollars of grants for overseas work to provide health care to the most vulnerable, food assistance to people who are otherwise starving, support for women who are victimized by sexual abuse, taking care of children who are orphaned, and on and on. The administration has tried to cancel billions of dollars of grants and foreign assistance. We have won an order repeatedly from the district court saying the payments have to be made. The administration is fighting us hard and now gone to the Supreme Court where a decision is pending about whether they have to adhere to the order from the district court. So these things are really live, and that's just a small scattering of the 18 cases that we filed, with more on the way, I can promise you. So the idea of just going through that was to give you kind of some update and flavor of it. But again, I want to contextualize it in terms of the overall pushback we're doing on the administration, where the litigation is taking on as many of these abuses as we can within the constraints of how the courts limit us, winning when we can, but inspiring hope in a way that's been really moving for those of us a public citizen to see. Doing the mobilization in the way Lisa said, some of these really big, massive mobilizations, hands off and no kings, some that have been in prior times would have seemed massive, but by comparison are a little bit smaller. So the John Lewis Good Trouble actions, which I know many of you participated in July, the workers over billionaire protests on Labor Day, we had more than 1,000 actions at each of those days of national days of action, but they were still small compared to the No Kings and hands off protests. And then also to make sure it's on your calendar, we're looking forward to another massive day of mobilization with No Kings 2.0 on October 18th. You've heard from us about that already. You're going to be hearing from us a lot more as we build toward that big moment. All these things are designed to grow the massive opposition to Trump, to face him down directly, but also to make members of Congress be stronger. They're not going to leave. They're going to move when they feel there's pressure from below. That's why we're seeing some progress right now as we're coming up on this shutdown moment, appropriations fight at the end of this month. The reason we're in as strong a position as we are is the kind of coalition work that Lisa's been describing, and also the grassroots push that's been putting some stiffness in the spine of the Democratic Party to oppose the authoritarian Trump. Last thing to say before we go to the Q&A. Because so much of this is unprecedented, we can look at what's going on in other countries, and we can and do and must try to learn from what others have done to fight authoritarian movements. But this is a specifically American challenge, and it's specific to this moment in time. There's no actual playbook about what to do. We're having to make it up as we go along, using our strategic sense about how to make change, how we fought Trump in the first term, how we can break away people who are supporting Trump, how we can gather those who are sort of in the middle and uncertain about what their position should be with Trump and expand the tent, how we can activate people who may be isolated and feeling left out. So that's what this comprehensive strategy is. And we have to, I guess I said that was the last thing, but still one more thing. I know some questions about this already, so I just want to preview it. We're obviously in a strange and sad and dangerous moment right now in the wake of the killing of Charlie Kirk, which was a human tragedy now turned into a political weapon by Trump and the administration. And they're saying some frightening and dangerous things about claiming broad terrorist networks that don't exist, about how they're going to go after organizations like Public Citizen. Their goal is to spread fear and intimidation. And our job is to, as much as we can, resist that fear, commit to more engagement in the public sphere, not to back down from calling authoritarianism, and continuing to do the work that we've been doing along the way. And I know that we're going to be doing that. I can promise you we're going to be doing that. And I'm quite sure that all of you on this call are going to be with us. So with that, let's try to go to the Q&A. Still time to put any questions in. Again, don't use the chat function for questions. Go to the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, and we'll try to get through as many as we can. Lisa, let me jump it over to you to start the conversation.
Sure. Well, thanks, Rob. And so many good questions in here. I've been scrolling a little bit, of course, paying close attention to what you were saying, but also looking at all the great questions we have in here. I was actually going to take us to the same place you just did, because there are a really large number of questions about how Public Citizen itself is dealing with what could be an attack on nonprofits, and the rhetoric that is coming from the administration at this moment that you were just referencing, and just what we're doing about it. And so just want to, I guess, layer on as my first answer to what you just said, and say that we are thinking about how we can use our collective power most effectively in this moment. As I mentioned earlier, and as Rob was discussing, we are right in the center of a lot of massive coalitions, because Public Citizen is so multi-issue, because we try to take on corporate power from so many different angles, and on so many topics, and we have so many tools, litigation and grassroots and organizing and advocacy. It makes us very well positioned for pulling the collective we together. And that's what we really think needs to happen in this moment. It's not a moment where nonprofits should kind of retreat to their own corners and wait to be called out by the administration, or targeted by the IRS or the DOJ, or investigated by MAGA Republicans on the Hill. But instead, we should join together and speak loudly about how inappropriate it is to weaponize a tragedy and use it to attack the free speech and services that nonprofits offer. So that's exactly what we're doing. So today we began circulating a solidarity statement for NGOs, getting folks to sign on to it, and working to push out this collective we. So I just wanted to say that we are joining together in this moment to say loudly that we will not be silenced. And then also thinking, very clearly about our own security and safety, making sure that we are protected even as we do our work and fight back. So I wanted to address that a little, since it came up from a lot of people. And then Rob, hand it to you for the next question.
Okay, thank you. It is tough. You guys are throwing so many questions at us. We're trying to read through them and digest them and combine them and get through as much as possible. So I see a number of questions that are raising different aspects of healthcare. So let me try to touch on some of them. I will not get to all of them because I haven't read all of them, but let me get through a few things. One question is about healthcare in the context of the shutdown fight, and is healthcare the only focus and the only frame? And the answer is no. We're leaning into healthcare because the issue is so serious, because the cuts to Medicaid will throw 17 million people off of healthcare, because the refusal to spend money allocated to the Department of Health and Human Services is so severe, and because there's a pending healthcare issue about whether, as some of you asked about this, whether subsidies under the Affordable Care Act will be continued. So it's a really crucial issue. The stakes for human beings are so high, and people can understand it. So it's not a complicated thing. Everybody understands what it means to either have healthcare or not have healthcare. But we're also raising, in the context of this fight, the need to get assurances that the Trump administration will spend the money that it's required to spend on an appropriations bill. And so Lisa was touching on this, like, if we have a deal, a budget deal, appropriations deal, but a budget deal, and the administration says, well, we feel like we can opt out of that. We just aren't going to do it. That's not really any kind of deal at all. So this is the moment of leverage for the Democrats to say, no, we're going to get guarantees locked in that when there's a commitment by Congress, when Congress passes a law and says you got to spend money, that actually the administration is going to spend the money. So that's one of the questions that came up. let me hit another one that I saw, at least, and I'll throw it back to you, which is some concerns about how the administration is moving on Medicare and working to undermine Medicare by expanding Medicare Advantage and also by moving towards pre-approval of treatments under traditional Medicare, which has not historically been the case. So these things are unfolding in real time, and those of you who are asking questions about it are right to be concerned about it. Now, I should say before getting into the details, of course, for us, the solution to this is to get rid of Medicare Advantage altogether, get rid of the complicated system we have, just expand and improve Medicare and make it the healthcare system for everyone. Medicare for all would deliver us healthcare to every person, doctor of their own choice, massive savings by eliminating all the waste in the for-profit healthcare industry. That's part of our long-term agenda. In the medium term, we're going to have to see how these things unfold because the proposals are still nascent and see what we can do to fight them. Whether we can win in Congress efforts to block them, or whether in some cases we may be able to litigate to block what they're doing. Some of what they're talking about with pre-authorization for traditional Medicare, they're going to do under a special authority they have to implement so-called pilot programs. And unfortunately, they've got pretty broad authority under that. So we're monitoring what they're going to do. We're looking for litigation opportunities, and we're absolutely going to be advocating super hard against it. But still TBD how it's all going to tease out. Lisa, let me throw it back to you.
Thanks, Rob. So I see a number of different questions that go back to my discussion of the appropriations process and the things that we are doing to try to stiffen the spines of Democrats in this moment. I saw a question that threw us back to the last budget inflection moment, which was in March. That was the last time that funding ran out. The last time that Democrats were challenged to use the leverage moment of a 60 vote threshold for a budget bill and try to win something out of it. And as folks might recall, and as this question recalls, they chose not to do that. And the question is asking, in that moment, one of the rationales that was given was, well, a shutdown is worse, isn't it? So we should just not, take the risk of shutting down the government when we think that's not a smart political calculus. So why are things different now? So our answer to that is things are different now because in the last months, in the last 4 months since March, we've seen the Trump administration pursue what is functionally a shutdown of tons of critical components of government, whether it's through what DOGE did to the government, striking directly at the heart of federal workers and their jobs, slicing huge chunks out of the services and programs that we trust and depend the government on, that we depend on them to bring to us, or it's the illegal moves they've been making that Rob was just discussing. They're impounding money, they're clawing it back, even though Congress has the power of the purse. The budget said they have to spend it a certain way. They are still led by Russ Vought, head of OMB, clawing it back either through impoundments or rescissions, all illegal. And so, that means that the status quo where we are right now is kind of like a shutdown. It is not great. So we are not advocating for shutdowns. They are not a great outcome, but it is true that this is a leverage point where we can get something out of this moment and the status quo is worse. And so that is the point that we're making to Democrats. And this time they are listening. So I think we're going to have a different outcome. I hope so. And we're applying pressure every way we can. There was an additional question where someone said, can we count on all the Democrats? So that is an open question. Absolutely. And that is why we are working with lots of allies, with Indivisible, with SEIU, with Groundwork Collaborative, with many others, to try to share why we think it is important to stand firm, to stand and try to get, increased healthcare out of this moment, to try to get more guardrails and increased power of the purse in this moment. And so far, the pressure seems to be working. So what I would say is we're going to be sending out emails asking you all to call your members. The group we have to shore up is a group of moderate Democratic senators. They need to stay tough, and we're going to need all your help to make this happen. But right now, tonight, I'm feeling optimistic, and I think with you all, we can do it. Rob, back to you.
Okay, I'm going to just shift gears. There are a few questions about the Supreme Court's shadow docket. The short answer to those questions is no, there's nothing we can do about it. Here's the longer thing. So the shadow docket, as many of you will know, is this term that refers to decisions the court is issuing on procedural motions but without full briefing and oral argument. So without the kind of thing that we're used to as like the big exciting moments at the Supreme Court, the kind that are portrayed in movies, they just get briefs and then they issue very rapid decisions. Often the decisions come with no reasoning whatsoever, although the dissents often are extensively argued. And they're often over things like should there be a stay? Like should the lower court decision be implemented right away? And what we've seen from the Roberts Court is the really aggressive and frequent use of the shadow docket, so-called shadow docket, to effectively issue substantive decisions without full briefing, without full arguments. And they've been a little like cantankerous about it, actually, in some of their recent decisions, saying, you need to respect the shadow docket as if those were full-fledged decisions, which they're not. And we've seen something unprecedented in response, which is judges, former judges, but now also current federal judges on the record saying, criticizing the Supreme Court and saying, we'll follow whatever rulings you issue, but you've got to give us actual reasoned decisions. How are we supposed to figure out what we're supposed to do with these unreasoned, meaning not reasoned at all, decisions? So I'm describing what's going on, but there's not really a lot we can do about it. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court in the constitutional system is the least accountable institution by far, especially on a micro day-to-day basis. At the end of the day, even whatever you think of the composition of the court, they do care about public opinion. So all this mobilizing and all the growing movement against authoritarianism will translate into how the court reacts, but not in a one-to-one way, the same way you might sort of really heavily lobby a member of Congress and get them to switch their position because they heard from their constituents. That's the best we can do as we continue to just do the traditional lawyering of making the best arguments possible at the Supreme Court. We're eyes wide open about what kind of court we're dealing with, but also we've got a pretty good record historically at the Supreme Court, and we're not pre-conceding any case that gets up before the Roberts Court. Over to you, Lisa.
Thanks, Rob. Fun scrolling through all of this. Thank you all for your amazing questions. One that I'm interested in and would love, I know Rob will have thoughts on as well, but if and when we are in a post-Trump moment, which I believe firmly we will have, and the pendulum swings back, what are the things that you hope to see? What differences? What are the first steps that we need to recommend to make sure that we actually seize such a moment? So, in thinking about this, urgency is the first thing that comes to mind for me. We're going to have a window to try to achieve things that shift power, that that move us in directions that may feel aggressive, because we are coming out of the other side of a Trump-created emergency where government has been attacked for 4 years. And so we'll need to rebuild, and we'll need to move quickly, and we'll need to do it with bold ideas. So the things that come from that, or that would make that happen, are things like a heightened risk tolerance on the part of Democrats. We're going to have to spend time centering our ideas, making it clear that they're not, what was once blue sky is now actually just common sense, and building up that rhetoric over the next couple of years to make that incredibly clear. Sharing it with validators, the needs for court reform, the need for campaign finance reform, the need for an economic plan that actually works for regular people. So all of that, we're going to have to be having clear conversations in an aggressive manner, so that when and if Democrats come back in, the urgency is there. And I heard it equated by a colleague of mine to how we reacted in the moment of COVID. It was an emergency. Lives were on the line, and we were willing to do things that were hard quickly. And that's a different operating mode than we've had in a long time in government. And so that's something that we're really interested in, a public citizen, figuring out first what the policy agenda is, the bold ideas that we need, but then second, how to center it so that we're ready to take advantage of that governing moment when we have it again. So I'll stop there. We could go on for ages about the policy ideas we have, which are large. But I think the most important thing to say tonight is that we need to really get the thinkers and the politicians ready to move fast and to be risk tolerant. Rob, I don't know if you want to take a slice at that
Yeah,
too.
well, I guess I'll add a word on that. The thing I would add, what you already said, but just besides urgent and risk tolerant, is to make sure it's bold. Um, it- it's almost inevitable we're going to need big things to fix the harms that Trump has done. But those big things have to be more than just literally rebuilding the things that he's destroyed. It, for a variety of reasons, including that the reason Trump was able to get elected ultimately was that so many people were frustrated with a system that they think correctly is rigged. So we need alongside the urgency really embodies this idea of really big ideas, which we're eager to socialize. And we're going to have to make sure that Democrats and anybody who's willing to join along are willing to do really big things. And that's a little bit by developing the ideas and being clear about them. But it's also, as Lisa was saying, really organizing so that there's a sense of demand for that that's understood, that we show that the ideas we're moving forward are popular. By the way, the American people massively support a very progressive agenda, whether it's dealing with taking on drug prices or expanding access to healthcare or taxing the rich or dealing with excessive CEO pay or aggressive measures to take on the climate crisis and protect the environment, putting corporate criminals in jail, breaking up too big to fail institutions, cracking down on big tech, on and on, get 70, 80% of the population supporting the things that I just listed. So people are there, but we got to show that people are there. We've got to activate people to demand that stuff. And then we've got to really put it to the Democrats and anyone who is willing to go along to make sure they deliver on it. So we got a few years to do that, but it's work that we know we have to do alongside of resisting Trump. And I guess I would say also, and some of you have heard us say this before, we actually did that in a very intentional way in the first Trump administration, especially in our core focus on democracy issues. So the work that we did starting in 2017 led to the creation of the large coalition that pushed for massive and transformational democracy reform and the legislation itself that became HR1, the For the People Act, and then the Freedom of the Vote Act, that we came this close to passing. We passed through the House and we're 2 votes shy in the Senate of overcoming the filibuster and getting an act into law. That's kind of a model for us, what we need to do, but not just in the democracy space, and even broader and more aggressively in the democracy space than we did the first time. Speaking of democracy, there are several questions about upcoming elections and Trump's effort to rig the system in one way or another. That will include, his efforts to demand Republican states do gerrymandering to push more seats as likely Republican, and possibly efforts to undermine the administration of elections in 2026. That's our core work on democracy. And so we're doing everything possible to counteract that. And a lot of this stuff is going to be really state by state and not so much federal level advocacy. We're longtime and strong supporters of independent commissions to do redistricting in states and have a fair districting process. But in light of what Trump is doing, we have been supportive of efforts like those in California. There's just no way to say states that will lean Democratic should have a balanced system, and states that lean Republican should have a rigged system to further favor Republicans. So we're trying to be honest about that. It's uncomfortable, but honest about it, opposing the rigging where we can, but supportive of counterbalancing measures. But as we go to 2026 and efforts to either intimidate election officials, lie about election administration systems, and so on, we're going to be very involved in states across the country, as we've been over the last many election cycles, to both protect elections, make sure the election officials themselves are physically protected and given the support they need, work with legislatures as much as possible to secure protections, and then as necessary, challenge either through litigation or protest any effort by Trump to interfere with the actual elections as we move to 2026. We're facing a Trump who's more ruthless than he's been. but we've done this many times before now, many election cycles. We've been able to take on his efforts to interfere with election processes, and we've had a pretty good success rate so far. I'm hopeful, not naive, but hopeful that we can have a fair election in 2026. We're going to absolutely do everything we possibly can to make sure that's the case. Back to you, Lisa.
Thanks, Rob. There is a great question that it got pushed down, so I'm trying to find it again. So I'm going to call her out by name, Ruth Fishkin, a question about reaching people in America who get their views of reality only from their social media feeds. It's a challenge that I think is worth addressing because so much of what we're talking about, the positive vision that I was talking about and Rob talked about as well, how are we going to center our ideas so that they feel common sense when we, come to that position where we again have a governing moment, and how we're going to push back as lies and other misinformation attempt to change election outcomes, or at least skew how people relate to them. So it's a real problem, and I don't think there's a silver bullet, but I think it's worth lifting in this forum because it's such a big part of the ecosystem right now, how people get their media, how they learn things, and then how they make choices based on that. So I think countering lies with truth, the most simple answer to this is people get their media from trusted validators, and right now trusted validators are people they know. That's one of the reasons that social media is so effective, because people feel like they know the communities that they inhabit within those silos. So while some people still get their media from cable news or from print, it's a smaller and smaller part of the overall media ecosystem. And so really what we can all do is try to promulgate those ecosystems and then talk to people we know, talk to a neighbor, expand the circle, invite someone to the protest, share the email that we send out, share the information with people who will listen to you because you're you. And so that's something I just wanted to say here tonight, because I think it's a part of the organizing that we're doing. It's not just, encouraging people to take action, which is key. It's also encouraging people to share information so that people they trust and who trust them learn it. The only way to combat lies is truth. Tira.
So we have like 1,000 comments in the chat and several hundred questions here. So we're not going to get through them all. I'm sorry, guys. It's also, just to be completely transparent, the system of answering these questions, Lisa and I are reading through them and trying our best to combine them and answer key points. And the chat is beyond our capacity to absorb, but I'm trying to skim that too. So I'm seeing a set of questions just kind of about how we operate and what we're actually doing. So maybe just a little bit of descriptive transparency about what Public Citizen is, who we are. So many of you will be supporters of ours and friends of ours and members for a long time. We've been around for more than 50 years. Some of you will have just joined us in the last few months. We're more than 100 staff. We're building up to around 125 staff. We're based in Washington, D.C. We have an office in Texas, and we've got a fair number of remote employees, but we're here in Washington, D.C. We work primarily on federal issues, but we've done an increasing amount on state issues in recent years, in addition to the work we do specifically in Texas. We're doing a lot of work on artificial intelligence in the states. We're doing a lot of work on protecting elections in states across the country. And we're doing a fair amount of increasing work on climate change and state-based advocacy. We were set up when we were founded by Ralph Nader and others to be able to do litigation so we could be in the courts, to lobby in Congress. We've got a bunch of lobbyists and different lobby teams to be able to engage with administrative agencies. So we've got like doctors on staff who are experts in drug safety and healthcare to work at the Food and Drug Administration and other health agencies and so on. We were set up to do our best to educate the public through effective communications, that we could do really technical work, but explain it simply. And we got a communications office that does that. We've got an awesome development team that communicates with you and helps get support from members across the country. And then in the last 10, 15 years, we've really leaned into trying to build up our capacity to engage members in-person activity around the country and to really be part of this mobilizing effort that we've been discussing. So we've actually brought on a bunch of awesome new staff in the last few months. We've got about 10 people working on these big mobilizations, some focusing on trying to organize students across the country, some just trying to staff up these massive mobilizations, some thinking about different creative actions we can do to carry out some of the work that Lisa was talking about. We're having an action tomorrow, which is Constitution Day, where we're having veterans retake their oath. Lawyers are talking about the Constitution across the country. Those things don't just magically happen. You got to help people come together and staff it. So we've been doing that kind of work. So that's who we are, and that's how we're carrying this stuff forward. Like I said, we have about 10 people working on the mobilization side. We've added more litigators. So you're asking about that. The people, when we bring these lawsuits, it's from people who are public citizen employees. We've got about 18 litigators right now working on these different cases. And the thing to tell you about those cases is a couple of things. One is we have the best litigators, period. And they've been they're working crazy hours, super hard on these cases. The cases don't stop. You file the case and like we think about the next one, but they got to keep carrying forward the case that's ongoing through all the back and forth with the administration. The appeals goes up, goes down, goes back up. So just tons of work. And what they've also done in ways that are super impressive is they've been just extremely creative in the theories that they've developed to bring these cases. So we can look at what the Trump administration is doing and identify all the evil things that they're doing. But then the question is, how do you bring a lawsuit about it? Even if you can say they're violating the law, it doesn't mean that you can bring a lawsuit. You've got to say who was affected and how are we going to represent them? And what's the theory we have to bring a lawsuit, not just because we say they're violating the law, but what law gives us the right to bring a lawsuit? And we've had a team that's been unbelievably creative in carrying these cases forward. So that's kind of who we are in the way we're doing these different pieces of work. One other thing that Lisa had underscored is, and I know this is a constant question in some of the questions in the chat, so we are super proud of the work that we do as public citizen. We understand that to mean all of us, so all of you are more than a million supporters. But we also understand that one organization can only do so much and really gains power by working in coalition. So when you're wondering, like, yeah, you get mail from a bunch of organizations, or we're working together. Yes, we are. Every day, like literally every day. First thing in the morning, Lisa and I on a call with about 20 other organizations. And that's just like what we're doing for the first 30 minutes of our day before we get on other calls with dozens and dozens or sometimes hundreds of others of organizations. So coalition is another big part of the work we're doing. And this group of 125 or so staff at Public Citizen, we do our work with you and we do our work only supported by you. So when we say we very much hope that you all feel that it is a we doing it, and that you understand that the financial support you give us is one way to be engaged in the work, is absolutely vital to having this awesome team, just 125 people, taking on this authoritarian monstrosity and making a really fundamental and vital difference. Over to you, Lisa. Last few questions, I think.
Yeah. Well, actually, your question that you just asked, I was going to go to Jay from Seattle, who asked a similar one, which was basically, I give, I support Public Citizen, but what else can I do? What more can we all do? And I think that is really the theme of tonight's town hall, and how we're thinking about all of our work is that if everybody just does a little bit more, if we all band together a little bit harder, if we build a coalition that's a little bigger, if we strive towards that 3.5% of the American population activated, that's what we need to resist in strongest terms. We are up against so much right now. It does feel like every day there's some new horror that's coming out of this administration or some new thing to fight or some new case that we need to bring. And I think, we are going to keep working as hard as we possibly can. But, all of you, like we need to do the same. And that means different things to different people. If it means you wrote a petition or signed a petition, next time make a call. If you go to every rally, next time recruit 5 people to come with you. It's always that sort of one step more for what we can all do together, as we're in such a fight, which is truly a fight for the soul of our democracy. I don't think we can say that loudly enough. I mean, we are in the fight of our lives so that we can get to that point, that we can make sure we make it through this next election, next 2 elections, to that place where the pendulum swings back, and we are pushing again bold policies that we all know we desperately need. So, what we can all do is just a little bit more. And I want to say how impressed I am by all of you, how grateful I am to be working with all of you in this moment. It's what inspires me, what makes me so excited about my job, and it's truly what we need in this moment. So back to you, Rob, maybe to address that point one more time and kind of take us home.
Well, let's just start by appreciating all of you, and giving us this hour, and everything that you do with Public Citizen and for this country. I know that it's a disturbing and sometimes frightening time. And here's our thesis about what we think matters most. Because we've given you the whole strategy, but just as human beings, we win when we build our movement, when people come together in larger and larger numbers. We got to be effective in what we do, but we need to grow and grow and grow. Authoritarians count on dividing us, making us feel hopeless, making us feel scared, keeping us separated at home and alone. So the mission, above all else, really, that we feel is to make sure that people get connected and that we have hope and energy to keep pushing. That undergirds everything we're saying. It undergirds the push for 3.5%. It undergirds all the lobbying. It undergirds having an effective litigation strategy. It undergirds how we're able to keep our staff engaged and excited and mobilized and energetic and working super hard. It undergirds how we can build expanding, not just our core coalitions, but expanding coalitions. It undergirds how we can reach out to new sectors of society and bring them into the movement against this authoritarian. So what we try to do is spread that hope. And it's not the hope based on faith. It's hope by feeling the power of solidarity, not letting ourselves get trapped and isolated and caught in some of these dangerous information bubbles that can be totally disempowering, but to feel the ways that we can join together and build our power. I'll tell you what, you know who's worried about that? Trump is worried about that. And the core people in the administration, the ones who aren't just total grifters, but who have an actual strategy, that is the thing they worry about most. It's why they're trying to weaponize this Charlie Kirk moment. It's why Russ Vought, the most important person in the administration other than Donald Trump, said his goal was to spread fear in the federal workforce, because they want to bully, intimidate, silence, and separate people. And so our job is to do exactly the opposite. And that's what we're trying to do in all our communications, in all of our actions, and all the ways that we come together. And we hope that you can take that forward, not just in the work, with us on a Zoom call, but in a meeting that you're holding in your living room, or a teach-in that you attend, or a book that you share with someone else. I think that kind of connectivity is the antidote to losing in an authoritarian moment. Okay, last thing. The folks who raise money for Public Citizen will hold me accountable if I don't tell you what you can do to continue to support us. So many of you are really been generous in supporting us. It's making a huge difference. When I'm saying we're hiring new staff because we're raising the money to pay people to do this vital work. So you can make a contribution by going to citizen.org. It's right there on the web, really easy to do. If you're not on our email list, you can sign up for the email list there for about taking action, and we'll be in communication with you in an ongoing way about what we're doing. If it's more comfortable for you to write a check, contribute through the mail, get the information there at citizen.org. If you're not already part of our planned giving program, get information also there at citizen.org. And if it works for you, one of the great ways to support us is to become a monthly sustainer where you're making a contribution of $5, $50, $500, whatever you can afford every month in an automatic way. We can count on that money. And when we have money in hand that we know we can count on going forward, it gives us the foundation to go out and hire some more people, continuing to grow the team to do the vital work that we're all talking about. All right, we're about at the hour. Huge appreciation from us for all you do, all your support and your engagement with us. Lisa, let me throw it to you to say a last word, but just thank you all. And we'll be holding these town meetings periodically, more opportunities for more conversation.
Thanks, Rob. Well, we're exactly at the hour, so I will just end by saying thank you. I really cannot thank you enough for everything you do with us, for us, in the fight, in this moment. It's essential. It's recognized. We see you just as you're seeing us tonight, and I just can't thank you enough. Appreciation. Night all.
Thank you all.